Sirens strobe the glass doors of St. Bridget's ER. A gurney wheels in, the sheet already torn by something that wasn't hands. The triage board flickers from room 6 to Wolf, letters that shouldn't exist in any hospital system. You're watching whispering narratives where the night bleeds into truth and the truth grows fangs. If your heart's steady, you're not listening closely enough. He said a dog bit him. Then the cardiac monitor screamed. The overhead lights dimmed and the metal tray on the crash cart began to sing, like silver remembering what it was forged to kill. Subscribe before the next full moon finds your door. The overhead speaker is stuck on a loop. Code blue, room 6, code blue, but the sound is wrong. Off pitch, like the hospital's lungs can't pull enough air. My name is Ash Navarro, EMT, 7 years on the rig. Good at not shaking, I'm still shaking. We brought him in at 0211, male, late 20s, soaked shirt, bite on the clavicle. But the chart won't sit still in my memory, because the chart didn't matter. The man mattered. The man who came in already halfway between one word and another. Vowels becoming growls. Breath fogging the glass like the room itself was a winter mouth. Dog bite. The triage nurse asked, pen ready to land on a box that would make everything normal again. He nodded, or tried to. The movement rippled through his shoulders like his bones were a riverbed, and something swam underneath. Bed, room 6. We swung the gurney, locked the wheels, and I felt the metal under my palms vibrate, just a little, like a tuning fork struck somewhere far away. The cardiac monitor spiked 148, 162, 191, then the waveform flattened into a clean, arrogant line. V-fib. Dr. Chen barked, snapping a glove. No, I said before I knew I was speaking, that's not a heart issue. The monitor wasn't dead, it was refusing. The patient's eyes opened. They were a color I don't have a word for. Yellow if yellow had weight. Close the blinds, he said. Or maybe the voice came from the jawline, splitting a fraction too wide. Close them, please. The blinds were already down, it didn't matter. The moon doesn't require direct sight. It just needs permission, and some nights terror is all the permission it asks for. The nurse Deirdre leaned in with the pulse ox. It'll just pinch a second. The probe slid on and her hand froze. Tiny black hairs crawled along the patient's knuckles like moss growing in time-lapse. Slick and deliberate, his fingernails, not nails anymore, not really, pressed against the bed rail until the rubber squealed. Sedate him, Doctor, Chen said. 2 of lorazepam, now. I should have stepped back. I should have gone to chart to wash my hands, to pretend I still belonged to a world with protocols. Instead, I watched his throat. Every swallow was a thunderclap. Veins laddered his neck like roots breaking through clay. The intercom coughed. Code silver. What? Deirdre whispered. We all stared at the ceiling speaker. Code silver is for a person with a weapon. And somewhere down the hall, as if answering the call, the stainless tray rattled like coins in a beggar's cup. He caught my stare. That color again. Lupine gravity, Ash, he said. And I swear to God I never told him my name. Don't run when it starts. When what starts? My voice was a paper cut. He opened his mouth, and the word starts came out in pieces, as if the language itself were getting torn into fur. Deirdre's syringe found a vein, plunger down, 2 milligrams sliding cold through his blood. For a heartbeat, one the monitor wouldn't dignify. He was only human misery and an ugly bite. The lorazepam kissed him behind the eyes. His jaw loosened, hair on his hands paused, as if reconsidering. That was when the generator coughed. St. Bridget's sits on an old power grid. Storms make the lights hiccup. The vents wheeze. We were dry tonight, but something in the bones of the building decided to shiver. The fluorescence dimmed to the color of morgue water. The vents sucked in a lungful of whatever the night was breathing outside. And room 6 got colder by 10 degrees in a single second. I watched my breath smear the air. Deirdre did too. We exhaled together, 2 ghosts rehearsing. The patient's pupils widened until they swallowed the color. The cardiac screen jittered back to life, not with a rhythm, but with spikes and teeth, a waveform gnashing across green glass. Epinephrine, Doctor, Chen said. But her voice wavered, not fear, calculation. Prep a line, and he screamed it was not human, it wasn't even animal. It was a sound like a building settling into its grave, steel bending, rebar groaning. Every instrument in the room answered, the clamp jars chiming, scalpels ringing like thin bells, the IV poles thrumming through the floor. I felt it hit my spine and retune me. I wanted to kneel. I wanted to run, door, Deirdre gasped. Close the... The automatic door stuttered halfway and stuck, glass teeth bared, through the gap. I saw the hallway beyond perform triage on reality. Nurses backing away, a janitor dropping his mop, the wheels on a portable X-ray cart spinning without touching the ground. Security to 6. The intercom lied. Security had already arrived, inside the patient's skeleton. He sat up without using his hands. The restraints we hadn't applied yet felt like an apology. His skin rippled like something was tallying where to cut. The teeth came first, sharpening in a neat, brutal logic. Then his fingertips blackened, nails curving. Each a comma at the end of a sentence I didn't want to read. Deirdre moved, God bless her, aiming the syringe like a dagger. He turned. The motion made a sound like fur erupting from wet earth. The plunger snapped under her thumb. No, he said, and the word carried winter. No more sleeping. I grabbed the crash cart because it was metal and heavy and real. My fingers found the top drawer and the silver gleamed, not the antique romance kind. Hospital silver. Forceps, hemostats, sterling for conductivity. Sterility and apparently salvation. The tray sang higher, sweet as a promise. And the thing inside the man flinched. He smelled the metal. He snarled, a new word for a new mouth. And the bed frame crumpled under his grip with the weary sigh of aluminum failing back. Dr. Chen snapped, stepping in anyway because some people make a vow and then they keep it. Even when the night shows its teeth, Ash, defib leads now. We both knew the defib wouldn't fix what was breaking. But rituals matter. The paddles hummed awake. He watched us with those lunar cold eyes. He cocked his head, dog-like, amused, or listening to a distant call that reached through the roof and the clouds and the gap between what we are and what we're afraid of. The first hair burst through his cheek like a thorn, then another, a line of them, marching toward his ear, mapping a border. His shirt surrendered with a clean rip you'd never get from human fingers. There were scars beneath, old, deliberate, a geometry of pain along his ribs. Someone had tried to draw a cage on him. Who did this to you? I asked, because we bargain with questions when we have nothing else. He shuddered. The bones of his shoulders rose like hills breaking the surface. You won't like the answer, try me. The moon did, he whispered, and smiled with too many teeth. The moon always does. But the ward, your ward, finishes the job. The lights flickered in that blackout slice. He wasn't on the bed. In the next, he was crouched on the floor, hand, paw, pressed flat, claws flexing against tile, calves taut enough to split. The room smelled like copper and alcohol and the hot, clean stink of a forge. I had a silver hemostat in my fist. I don't remember picking it up. I lifted it like a cross. The sound in the room dropped to a hush that had nothing to do with silence. He leaned away, tiny, involuntary, fear not of me. Of the medal and what it meant, you know, he said, voice unraveling. The old place is built with silver stitches in the walls. Hospitals, prisons, churches, they never stopped believing. They just stopped saying it out loud. Stay down, Dr. Chen ordered. We can help you help. He laughed, and the laugh was a cough full of cinders. Open every cabinet. The tools remember you should too. The door shrieked. Something outside hit it hard. Security, or a staffer with a dream of bravery and a fire extinguisher. The glass jumped. The patient's head snapped toward the noise. Ears. Yes, ears. Tracking. Don't run when it starts, he told me. He hadn't been warning me about him. He'd been warning me about the building. The generator coughed again. The vents exhaled freezer air somewhere deep. A boiler moaned. In pain or prayer, I couldn't tell. The intercom choked on another code silver and swallowed it whole. Deirdre moved for the oxygen tank. I moved with her, crash cart wheels screaming. He lunged, not at us but toward the window. The blinds bloomed outward as if from a gust. The moon was a smudged nickel behind cloud, but he tilted his head as if he could feel its gaze like a hand on the nape. I threw the hemostat, it struck his forearm and smoked. Not sizzle, not melodrama, smoked like a cold pan set on a hot stove. He roared, recoiling, shock breaking through the animal with something like gratitude braided into it. He nodded at me, tiny, as if acknowledging the first true thing all night. Good, he said, you've got the key. What key? To triage, he came again, faster. Deirdre yanked the O2 tank up like a batter at the plate. The blow landed. He staggered, not because of the weight, but because the metal bit him. a silver tooth that remembered wolves long before we domesticated our fear. He landed on the bed on the shredded frame and laughed with his ribs. This ward, he said, is full of silver. But the locks aren't on me, meaning? Dr. Chen asked, and I realized her hands were steady. Meaning what? Meaning some of your rooms keep people in. His eyes lifted to the camera bubble in the corner, red light winking, and some keep things out. Guess which room you put me in? Room 6's camera blinked twice like a tired eye. The intercom crackled. A voice came through I didn't recognize. Not hospital, not human. Words braided wrong. I caught only 3 that made any sense at all. Open, let, hunger. The door finished closing on its own. We hadn't touched the switch. The locks thunked. The world on the other side went away. Inside room 6, the instruments sang higher. Silver, calling silver, a chorus of cold metal remembering an oath. My hand found another tool, a sleek, pretty thing with a cruel mouth. Lure lock, sterling body. It hummed against my palm. He raised his head. Fur crawled across his jaw. The last of his human voice stood in the doorway of what he was becoming and made its final plea. Don't run, Ash, he said. Not from me, from them. Who's them? The ones who think containment is a cure. Something heavy rolled outside, then stopped. A wheeled stretcher, moving without hands. The hospital took a breath, and the ER learned how to howl. If the silver sings where you live, tell us in the comments which door you'd lock first. The doors never close that fast in St. Bridget's. They wheeze, they argue, they stick halfway with a shrug. Tonight they slammed shut like they'd been waiting for centuries to remember how. The glass teeth clicked together, and room 6 became a coffin with fluorescent bones. Dr. Chen pressed her palm against the door's reader. Nothing, override, she barked, looking up at the ceiling. Override room 6. The intercom responded with static, then a voice, not the friendly monotone we're used to. This was warped, stretched, syllables chewed, containment gauged. The sound had grit in it like gravel being forced through a throat. Since when do we have containment protocols? Deirdre whispered, since never, I said. Hospitals don't keep secrets except they do. And this one was about to break its silence. The werewolf, half man, half monster, crouched on the broken bed, teeth like ivory needles reflecting the sick green light. His breathing filled the room like a second ventilation system. But he wasn't charging us, he was listening, ears now jagged, fur-fringed, turned toward the door as if something out there had more of his attention than we did. Then it happened. From the hallway we heard the sound of a gurney rolling. Wheels squealing, steady as a heartbeat, but there were no hands pushing it. No voices guiding it, just momentum, relentless. As if gravity itself had been repurposed, it rolled past the door window, its sheets stained with shapes that looked too much like handprints pressed from underneath. The intercom hissed again. Open. Hunger. Release. Deirdre clutched the O2 tank tighter. Ash, she whispered. That wasn't him? I nodded. No. That was the building. The fluorescent lights above us stuttered into strobes. Flicker flash revealing fragments like crime scene photos. A nurse down the hall standing frozen, her mouth open in a scream, her shadow lagging a full second behind her body. A security guard raising his baton before the door behind him sealed with a bang, cutting his arm in half a second too late. And beyond it all, in the half-dark stretch of the corridor, shapes moving on all fours. Heavier than men, but smaller than our patient. Fast, hungry, the wolfman smiled. Lips torn by teeth too big for a human face. Now you understand, he growled. They don't cage me, they feed me. What are you talking about? Dr. Chen snapped, still clinging to control like it was a chart note she could write her way out of. Containment isn't for your safety, he said. It's for theirs. They lock one of us in and let the others in the walls taste the fear. The ceiling vent rattled, a hand, not human, not clean, pressed against the grate from inside, fingers too long, nails scraping. Leaving streaks that smoked, the grate groaned, metal screws bending as if eager to give way. I raised the silver hemostat. My palm ached where it had scorched me earlier, but it sang in my grip now, a tuning fork of defiance. The werewolf's eyes flicked to it, then back to the vent. He wasn't snarling anymore. He was bracing, the grate popped loose, a shape dropped into the room, emaciated. Gray-skinned, its face a blur of wolf and patient. Like a werewolf stillborn in mid-shift, it hit the tiles with a wet crack and hissed. More instinct than language, it lunged, mouth unhinged wider than any human jaw, teeth like broken glass. I swung the hemostat. The contact was instant fire. The thing shrieked, flesh sizzling like butter on a skillet. It recoiled, slammed into the crash cart, overturned the instruments. Silver scattered like confetti across the tiles. Each piece hummed, vibrating with memory. The creature howled, a discordant echo of the wolfman's voice, and its skin peeled back in strips where the silver touched. Deirdre didn't hesitate. She brought the O2 tank down on its skull, once, twice. Bones split with a sound like someone snapping a thick branch. The thing convulsed, screeched, and then dissolved into a smear of ash and fluid that reeked like wet iron. Silence followed. No, not silence, breathing. Not just hours more outside the door. Heavy, coordinated, the kind of breathing packs do when they wait for a signal. The werewolf on the bed rose slowly, spine cracking, bones rearranging with awful precision. His voice came out shredded, halfway to a growl. "Now you see the locks, now you hear the truth." "What truth?" I demanded. "That your ward isn't a place of healing." He said, his eyes gleamed molten gold. "It's a kennel." The lights flickered again, this time when they came back. The glass door was wet with handprints, some human, some not. The intercom spat sparks, then settled into a single awful command. "Next patient, if your hospital kept secrets like this, would you fight or let the doors close? Comment your choice." There's a rhythm in every ER, clipboards, rolling carts, vital signs beeping like clockwork. Tonight that rhythm had been hijacked. The beeps were growls, the wheels were claws, and every surface hummed with a memory older than medicine. We had one chance to turn the ward's instruments into weapons before the things outside forced their way in. "Silver," I said, my voice cutting through the static haze. "Everything Sterling, grab it, doctor." Chen's eyes narrowed. She wasn't the kind to buy into myths, but she was the kind to trust a pattern, and she'd seen the first creature disintegrate under the bite of metal. Forceps, hemostats, scalpels, trays, anything surgical grade, she ordered. Snapping into commander mode, Deirdre didn't hesitate. She swept the crash cart with one arm, dumping clamps, retractors, and needle drivers into a pile that gleamed like moonlight spilled across tile. I grabbed a retractor, its long, curved jaws cold in my hand, even before I swung it. I could feel the vibration, like the metal was tuning itself to the night. The werewolf patient watched us, half-shifted, body a battlefield of fur and scars, his lips pulled back, not in mockery, but approval. "Now you sound like a pack," he rasped. Then the pounding began. The door shuddered with each impact. Not fists, too heavy, something bulkier, bone-laden. The glass bowed inward, flexing with every blow. Shadows flickered across the narrow window. Hunched forms. Multiple, moving with a predator's patience. They weren't rushing, they were testing. Deirdre strapped a scalpel to the end of a mop handle with surgical tape. "Improvised spear, I did not sign up for this." She muttered, teeth clenched. "You're signed in," I said. Your badge beeped at the door. "That makes you family now." The pounding stopped. Silence. A drip from the busted IV bag tapped the tiles like a metronome. I held my breath. Chen held hers. Even the wolfman stilled. Then came the scrape. Long, deliberate, metal on metal, like something dragging claws across the hinges. The door's lock blinked red, then green, then red again. "They're hacking the system," Chen said. Her voice cracked for the first time. "Not hacking," the wolfman corrected. His teeth gleamed. "Invited." The door jumped open an inch, then slammed shut again, as if the building itself was arguing with its own decision. But the damage was done. A shape slithered through the gap, skin gray, torso twisted, eyes glowing feral white. Its jaw clicked like broken scissors. Behind it, more pressed against the glass, smearing it with breath, Deirdre thrust her spear. The scalpel punctured the creature's shoulder. Smoke erupted, acrid and black. It screamed, flailing against the mop handle, but the silver kept biting. I swung my retractor like an axe, catching its side. The contact was surgical and savage. The flesh sizzled, the ribs split. The thing crumpled, half ash before it hit the floor. The rest outside shrieked in unison. Their hunger vibrating the glass, Chen dropped to her knees at the overturned cart. She picked up a delicate pair of forceps, her surgeon's hands steady. "Never thought I'd use these for defense," she muttered. Then she jammed them into the door's gap as the next creature tried to push through. The silver touched its face, just a graze, and half of its jaw dissolved like paper in a furnace. "Not bad for evidence-based medicine," I said. "Don't thank me." Chen snapped. Just keep swinging. The wolfman crouched low, his transformation advancing with each breath. Claws curled from his fingers, slicing the air. They'll keep coming, he growled. They smell blood and silver. They think it's a feast. What do they want? I demanded. They want you to believe the hospital saves you, he said. His eyes gleamed with grim certainty. But it doesn't. It serves you. The glass splintered. Spiderweb cracks racing outward. One more hit and the barrier would give. We weren't prepared for a wave. Not yet back, Chen barked, eyes darting to the supply cabinet. Ash, open that, the locked drawer. I yanked it open. Inside, wrapped in sterile cloth, was a tray I'd never seen before. Every instrument gleamed brighter than the others, etched with tiny sigils along the handles. Not standard issue, not even legal. What the hell is this? I whispered. Legacy stock, Chen said, voice clipped. Old donors, old traditions. We keep them for emergencies. Define emergency. Deirdre barked. Chen's gaze flicked to the spiderwebbing glass. This, the tray hummed in my hands, a choir of silver ready for battle. I tossed Deirdre a set of forceps. Chen took the scalpel, and I gripped a long bone saw that felt carved for this moment. The wolfman tilted his head, nostrils flaring. Sterling, he whispered, true silver. You've been guarding the cure all along. The door fractured. A dozen hands shoved through the cracks. Some clawed, some pleaded. All desperate, their voices overlapped, a chorus of hunger and agony. Let us in. Let us eat. Let us heal. We struck as one, silver in fists, hearts hammering. The ER became a battleground of light and screams. Each strike burned, each contact purged. Ash and smoke filled the room, choking but righteous. But for every one we put down, more pressed closer. Their shadows stacked in layers across the door until the light vanished. Chen's scalpel dripped black ichor. Deirdre's makeshift spear smoldered where it had split a skull. My saw sang with every strike, teeth grinding bone to powder. And then the intercom, calm and cold, whispered again, next patient, room 7. The locks behind us clicked open. If your hospital had a legacy stock of silver, what would you do? Burn it, hide it, or use it? Comment below. The locks behind us sighed open with the smoothness of something rehearsed, not mechanical, the kind of movement you get when a predator finally stretches its jaw. We turned as one. The sign above the frame glowed dim red. Room 7, Deirdre shook her head. That room's been sealed since I started here. Chen's knuckles whitened around her scalpel. It's been sealed longer than that, generations. Why? I asked, though my gut already knew the answer. The wolfman stood straighter now, his body no longer resisting the shift. His bones had resigned, his muscles sculpted by something feral and ancient. He was more wolf than man, but his voice, when it came, was clear. Because they can't cage the moon. Only what it leaves behind. The hallway hummed, not lights, not vents. A low, primal thrum, like a heartbeat pulsing through the very tiles. Room 7's door inched wider, no hands touching it. The smell that poured out was coppery, old blood steeped in disinfectant. A memory of slaughter hidden under bleach. I stepped closer despite myself. Inside, the light was faint, more shadow than illumination. But in that gloom I saw outlines, cots. Not hospital beds, cots. Lined in rows like barracks, each with restraints rusted black. And in those restraints, bones too long, too crooked. Human skeletons with wolf jaws half-grown, ribs warped as if mid-shift when death froze them. Some had collars engraved with medical tags. Others wore rosaries around necks that had split into fur before the end. Deirdre gagged into her sleeve. Chen only whispered, God help us. But God had never signed this ward's intake sheet. At the center of room 7 stood a tank, glass reinforced, taller than a man. It was filled halfway with fluid the color of mercury. Floating inside, suspended like a grotesque fetus, was a wolf skull larger than any I'd ever imagined. Its jaws parted, tusks grown long and twisted. Tubes burrowed into the bone as though the hospital had been milking it for something. Moon Marrow, the wolfman said, reverent. They keep the source here, feed it, and in return, it feeds them, the tank hissed, bubbles rising. The skull's eye sockets glowed faintly, twin lanterns in the dark. The marrow wasn't dead, it was dreaming. Why? I croaked. Chen's face was gray, sweat slick on her temples. Research, cures, or maybe control doesn't matter. We've been nurses to a god we never understood. The intercom crackled, voice smooth again. Clinical, triage complete. New admission required. The restraints on the cots rattled, bones shifted, scraping metal, and then one skeleton moved. Its skull rolled toward us, jaw clicking open. No flesh, but still howling. Another followed, ribs jerking like a marionette. The room filled with a chorus of skeletal snarls, bones dragged upright by invisible strings. Deirdre thrust her silver spear forward. Nope, 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 nope. The nearest skeleton's jaw clamped on the mop handle. Sparks flew where bone met scalpel steel. Its empty sockets burned faint white, echoing the marrow's glow. They're not alive. Chen hissed. They're puppets. Then who's pulling the strings? I demanded. The wolfman's gaze flicked to the tank. His ears pinned back, teeth bared. The marrow. It remembers every howl, every death. It makes soldiers out of echoes. The bones surged. 3, then 5. Clattering forward like war drums made fleshless. Their claws scraped tile. A sound sharp enough to cut nerves. I swung the bone saw. Silver teeth bit through a rib cage, splitting it like kindling. Ash burst, but the pieces kept crawling, dragging themselves toward me. Chen slashed another across the spine. It collapsed only to reassemble. Vertebrae locking like puzzle pieces. These things don't quit. Deirdre screamed. They don't need to, the wolfman growled. They only need to stall. Stall for what? I asked, as if answering the tank trembled. Marrow skull's tusks scraped glass. The fluid bubbled harder, boiling. The lights above room 7 dimmed to black, leaving only that glow, silver white. Lunar and merciless, the marrow was waking up. The intercom whispered again, softer now, almost intimate. Next shift, the cots rattled harder. Bones shook like they were laughing. And behind me in the hallway, the pounding on room 6's door returned, louder, hungrier. We were caught between the starving and the source. The wolfman crouched low, muscles tight. Eyes molten. Choose, he snarled. Fight the echoes, or break the cage. And for the first time that night, I realized he wasn't our enemy, not yet. Would you risk opening the tank to stop the bones, even if it meant unleashing what's inside? Comment your answer before the marrow wakes. The tank trembled like a heartbeat. Each pulse rippled through the mercury fluid, glowing veins spidering out from the skull as if it were bleeding light. The cots clattered in rhythm, bones rattling against restraints. A macabre applause for their conductor. Back up, Dr. Chen barked, though her own steps betrayed her, inch by inch toward the door. Don't get close to that glass, but the marrow wasn't asking for proximity. It was reaching. The glow in its sockets pulsed, and every bone in the room shivered like it wanted to crawl toward it. The skeleton I'd split with the saw snapped back together in one violent jerk. Vertebrae reknit, ribs curved back into place, and it rose with twice the fury. Jaw clacking like castanets of war, I slashed again, sparks flying, a silver teeth bit bone. It screamed, not from pain but delight. The marrow fed it more strength, and the ash that should have been its grave whirled back into form. These things don't die, I growled. They don't need to, Chen said, her scalpel shaking. The marrow's making them infinite. Deirdre jabbed her spear into one's eye socket. Smoke hissed, it stumbled, but instead of falling, it dropped to all fours, feral and fast. It skittered along the tiles like a spider. Jaws snapping for her ankle, she yanked her leg back just in time. The spearhead still smoking, the wolfman finally moved. His transformation was nearly complete, fur bristling, claws arced, eyes blazing molten gold. But instead of tearing into us, he lunged for the tank. His claws screeched across the glass, sparks flying. The marrow inside pulsed brighter. As if mocking him, he turned, teeth bared. Help me break it. You're insane, Chen snapped. You'll unleash whatever that is. It's already unleashed, he roared, voice splitting between man and monster. Better to free it than let them feed it. The bones surged at once, like an orchestra hitting a single violent note. They swarmed, teeth clattering, claws scrabbling. Deirdre stabbed one through the spine. Chen slashed another across the ribs. I swung the saw in a wide arc, cleaving 3 in half, but they reformed. Dust whirling back into shape, puppets on invisible strings. The marrow pulsed again, harder, the glass cracked. Hairline fractures spidered outward. Glowing with lunar light, fluid hissed through, hitting the tiles with a metallic sizzle that ate holes straight through the floor. Oh, hell, I whispered. It's corrosive. The wolfman pressed both hands, claws billy, against the fracture, his fur smoked, flesh blistering. He didn't care, he shoved harder, roaring. The sound so raw it vibrated my teeth. The marrow responded. Its tusks shifted, scraping the glass with a sound like nails on bone. The sockets flared silver-white, blinding. Every skeleton in the room froze. Jaws wide, then they screamed in unison, not in rage but reverence. The intercom whispered softer now, almost gentle, restraints released. Every cot snapped open, restraints uncoiled like snakes, falling useless, and the bones stood, dozens, maybe more, a small army, all with sockets lit by the marrow's glow. Chen gripped my arm. Ash, we can't fight this. Deirdre's voice broke. We're dead, but I felt the saw vibrate in my hands. Alive, furious, the silver wanted blood. No, I said, jaw set, not dead, not yet. I stepped forward, swung the saw against the crack in the tank. Sparks flew, smoke curled. The marrow's light flickered, angry. Almost startled, the wolfman grinned through his pain. Yes, again together we struck, claw and silver, man and monster. The tank groaned, fissures widening, the fluid sloshed violently, hissing against the floor behind us. The bones surged forward again, dozens of them. Clattering like a storm of teeth, Deirdre jabbed her spear. Chen slashed, and I kept hammering the tank with everything I had. The marrow roared, not with a mouth, but with light. The glass screamed under the strain. Then crack, the tank split wide, fluid gushed, flooding the floor with mercury fire. Bones dissolved where it touched, skeletons shrieking as they melted into ash and steam. The marrow skull dropped, heavy as stone. Cracking the tiles on impact, its sockets blazed. Light spilling out in raw waves that burned shadows into the walls. For a moment, silence, the bones gone. The marrow on the floor, steaming, then it twitched. A jaw spasm, tusks scraping tile. The marrow was waking fully. The wolfman staggered back, fur smoking, chest heaving. Now you've done it, he rasped. You've set the moon free. The intercom flickered with static. Then spoke in a voice no machine should have. Shift change complete, and the lights went out. Would you smash the marrow to end it, or run before the lights come back? Choose your fate in the comments. Dark, absolute, the kind that doesn't just kill sight but memory, where you forget light ever existed. The emergency ward's hum had always been a comfort. The buzz of fluorescence, the ping of monitors. Now silence pressed like a pillow over the face of the world. Only one thing remained, the marrow's glow. 2 sockets burning silver-white, a lighthouse of lunacy in the dark. And it was pulling. I felt it first in my teeth. A vibration, low and insistent, like someone plucking my nerves like harpstrings. Deirdre whimpered, clutching her jaw. Chen staggered, hands shaking as her scalpel clattered to the floor. We weren't just looking at the marrow, it was looking at us. The wolfman roared, claws digging into tile to anchor himself. Don't look directly, he barked. His voice was shredded, but commanding. It feeds through the eyes. Too late, around us, the staff who had hidden in corners, the ones we'd half forgotten, began to move. Nurses, orderlies, a guard, faces slack, eyes glowing faint white. They walked toward the marrow in a trance, bodies pulled by an invisible tide. Their shoes squeaked on tile like funeral hymns. Stop them, Chen shouted, but her voice cracked with despair. Deirdre lunged, thrusting her silver spear into the chest of a nurse she'd shared coffee with every shift. The woman barely flinched, only shuddered as smoke hissed from the wound. She kept walking, impaled, dragging the mop handle with her, as if the spear were a leash. God, Deirdre sobbed, it's using them. The marrow pulsed brighter, the trance deepened. More staff emerged from shadowed rooms, eyes lit, jaws slack. Patients too. A man in a hospital gown dragging his IV pole, a child clutching a stuffed bear, both glowing with that same awful lunar light. It wasn't a ward anymore, it was a procession. The wolfman snapped his jaws, snarling, "This is its feast. Flesh or bone, it doesn't care. It just wants hands to worship and mouths to howl. How do we stop it?" I demanded, clutching the silver saw, his golden eyes locked on mine, unblinking. By becoming what you fear most, I didn't understand. Not fully. But then I saw him, fur bristling, skin split, muscles quaking, holding the marrow at bay by sheer force of transformation. The silver in the room bit him, burned him, but he endured. He was the only one who could fight hunger with hunger. The procession reached the marrow. The first nurse dropped to her knees, pressing her forehead to the skull. Smoke rose from her skin, flesh searing. But she didn't scream. She smiled. Chen broke. Ash. If it consumes them, it'll spread. It'll eat the whole hospital. It's already eating, I said. Deirdre tugged at my arm. Then what the hell do we do? We can't kill it with scalpels. The wolfman turned, his silhouette massive in the glow, eyes molten fire. You can't kill the marrow, but you can starve it. How? Cut off its ward. I realized then what he meant. The building, the hospital, wasn't just a host. It was a body feeding the marrow through lights. Vents, power. If we severed the grid, if we gutted the ward, maybe, just maybe, we could starve the thing before it finished waking. But cutting power in a hospital isn't a switch. It's a death sentence for everyone hooked up to machines. Heart patients, children, innocents. Chen's face hardened, jaw tight. She'd been a surgeon long enough to know what triage really meant. We can't save them all, she whispered. So who do we save? The marrow pulsed again. Brighter, brighter, filling the hall with liquid silver light. The procession grew, more shadows peeling off from doorways. Staff, patients, all walking, all glowing. The wolfman bared his teeth. Choose fast. The moon doesn't wait. And in the marrow's glow, I felt my hand trembling on the bone saw, not from fear, but from the weight of a choice no one should ever have to make. If starving the marrow meant killing the hospital's power, would you pull the plug? Tell us whose life you'd risk to end the hunger. The marrow's glow swallowed everything, the walls, the stretchers, even the air, silver drowning the world in a tide that tasted like hunger. The procession of nurses, patients, guards, all knelt before the skull as if it were an altar. Their flesh smoked, their eyes burned, but their mouths smiled. The wolfman crouched low, fur smoking where silver had scorched him, but his eyes locked on me. The ward feeds it. Kill the ward. Chen's voice was hoarse. Ash, you cut the grid. Every patient on life support. Every machine, it'll all go dark, and if we don't... I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Deirdre's spear trembled in her grip. We're deciding who lives and who dies. That's triage, Chen whispered. That's all it's ever been. The marrow pulsed again, tusks gnashing against tile, sockets blazing. The floor cracked beneath it, silver veins spreading like roots. The whole hospital shuddered, every vent and wire groaning as if the building itself were about to kneel. And I understood. This wasn't a ward anymore. It was a cathedral, and the marrow was its god. I tightened my grip on the bone saw. My choice was already made. Where's the main line? I asked. Chen's eyes filled with tears. Basement, behind the morgue, of course. Where else would you keep the kill switch in a hospital that had always served the dead? The wolfman rose, taller than any man had a right to be, fur bristling, claws gleaming. His voice was both man and monster, both plea and command. I'll hold the marrow. You cut the line. Why help us? Deirdre asked, voice cracking. He bared his teeth in something like a smile. Because if the marrow wakes fully, even I'll be just another worshipper. The procession stirred, eyes glowing, bodies twitching like marionettes on invisible strings. They turned toward us, jaws opening in unison. The marrow pulsed again. Commanding its choir, the wolfman lunged. He hit the skull with everything he had, claws raking, teeth gnashing. The marrow shrieked, not with sound, but with light, the sockets flaring so bright they branded the walls. The trance-walkers screamed, dropping to the floor, writhing but not dead, not free, go, roared. We ran down the hall, past shattered gurneys and silver-scorched tiles, through doors that hissed shut behind us as if the hospital itself were trying to trap us. The morgue smelled of ammonia and secrets. The main breaker loomed, a steel panel humming with power. Chen grabbed the latch, hesitated. Her hands shook. Once we do this, there's no undo, I finished. Deirdre's eyes shone wet. Then let's end it. I raised the saw. Silver teeth glinted in the morgue's dim light. I swung, sparks flew. The breaker screamed like a beast gutted. The lights in the hospital died in one long final sigh. The marrow's glow vanished. For a heartbeat, there was only darkness. No hum, no light, just silence, heavy as earth. Then faintly, a sound, not the marrow, not the ward. A howl, long, defiant, the wolfman's voice, echoing through the black, and then silence again. When the emergency generators sputtered back hours later, the marrow was gone. Room 7 was a crater of ash and shattered glass. The wolfman was nowhere to be found. Only claw marks in the tile remained, burned deep, as if he'd fought until there was nothing left. The staff and patients who had knelt in trance remembered nothing. They woke groggy, confused, faces blistered where the light had touched them. But alive, Chen said nothing. Deirdre said nothing, I said nothing, because what could we say? That the hospital had been a kennel. That silver was the only medicine. That we'd starved a god with a single switch. All I know is this. When I close my eyes, I still see the marrow sockets burning, still feel the pull in my teeth. And I still hear his voice, "Don't run when it starts." And every time I walk into an ER now, I glance at the walls, the trays, the instruments. I listen for a hum that isn't electricity, because the marrow isn't gone, it's waiting for its next ward. And when the locks bite again, I know who they'll call. Would you step into room 7 if it opened in your hospital? Tell your story in the comments before the marrow finds another ward. And for those who hunger for more, step deeper into the shadows with our ultimate werewolf horror playlist, linked in the description below. In the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them. And trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.